This is Joe Leibner doing Mod 5. Here I'm talking about visualization in our presentations. Visualization is the way presentations are perceived visually. We're first going to talk about typography. Typography is the way that the text or the information within the presentation is presented, and we're going to look at a couple of things in that category. First thing that we're going to talk about is font choice, highlighting, and line length. Your font choice is important because fonts actually have purposes. Not every font is appropriate for every setting. There are heading fonts. Those are your prettier fonts, the ones that you wouldn't want to read a paragraph of, but they're attention grabbing. And then there are text fonts. Text fonts are your very standardized fonts that are gentle on the eyes to read. You've got to be careful that you're not picking something that is just circles and lines, because somebody that's has a little bit of trouble reading will have a little bit of trouble discerning the text in large blocks like that. So they need to be comfortable, easily distinguishable characters for the text body. Highlighting and line length are important because if you highlight everything, then nothing is important. It undoes the purpose of highlighting. You highlight to show emphasis. If you highlight everything, then you've shown emphasis on everything, thereby nullifying all of it. Line length is important because you don't want something that's too wordy all the way across the page. You don't want something that is overly communicative in one line. Break it up, make it small, bite-sized messages, and continue on. You don't want a whole lot of stuff. So the way that you choose the font in your presentation and the way that you display that font makes a big difference in the receptiveness of it. Nobody wants to read a book on a presentation. For example, a title font, that would be your prettier font. This cursive concept right here, we don't want to see that down here all over the place in a text block. Likewise, you also don't want to be crazy with your fonts. We don't need to be changing fonts over and over and over. Fonts are to convey a message. They are not to be the message. So have a clear text font. You can see a good example of it over here. You can see an anti-example of it over here. There's too many things going on for a very simple message. It makes it all very convoluted. Screen design. Your screen design has to be well balanced. How much information is presented and how it's grouped, that's what we mean when we use the phrase screen design. So the amount of information that is actually presented on the screen, and then what that information is linked to visually. So when something is grouped, it's conjoined to it. So if you've got text blocks that are conjoined together to have one particular content segment, that would be something that's grouped. The important thing is to remember it's better to have more slides than information on a single slide. It's always okay to have slides to extend a presentation. You should not just have paragraph after paragraph worth of text on a presentation at all. You don't want just thing after thing after thing on the page. It's too much. It's absolutely overload. What you want is key information, and it should be presented visually appealing. So bite-sized bits of information in a way that is not strenuous or overwhelming. You want to get main ideas. Including media is common and should be done throughout your presentations. But just like with screen design, just like with the text, you need to be careful. So media is things like graphs, animations, video, and audio. And again, these things are great tools, but we don't want to get into overload situation. Just because you can graph it, just because you can display it in a pictograph style format, doesn't mean that it should all be on the same thing at the same time. This is too much. This is too busy. You're not going to convey message, particularly if you're giving information to a large group of people. Nobody's going to be able to see all of this stuff unless they're looking directly at it. So you give just one bit of information per slide is ideal, and then go on to your next slide. If it's worth having in a graph, then show it and let it be on its own. You don't need to overload everything. The cognitive load theory is all about giving people too much. You're building a presentation, right? So you want to make sure that your foundation is laid on simplicity and content delivery. The presentation itself should not be overbearing the content. The presentation is just the vehicle. What's inside the vehicle is what matters, and that's the content. So what you want to do is present that in such a way that the content can be received simply and without much effort. You don't want people to have to really struggle to understand what you're saying. So you're building in an organized fashion that is on a solid foundation. Again, give bite-sized bits of information and then move on to the next thing. Keep messages uncluttered and on target. You don't need to make everything convoluted. Make 2 slides if you need to. The content is the star, not the presentation. So just like we said a moment ago, it's important to remember that your content is what you are trying to deliver. You're not trying to deliver the presentation itself. Hopefully this was helpful.